We're on a mission to find the greatest allotment site in Britain. We've travelled the length and breadth of the country to find Britain's greenest gardeners, tastiest produce and most inspiring community projects. And when our journey is complete, the most outstanding site will be named the Digging for Victory Champion. Welcome to Digging for Victory. Today we've travelled to the Preston Lane allotments in Stockton-on-Tees, where 48 plot holders have been arching their backs and digging their soil in their bid to reach our grand finale, the chance to become Digging for Victory champions and win a prize worth £2,000. With over 10,000 allotment sites in Britain, Preston Lane has done exceptionally well to get to the final stages of this competition. They are one of just 9 sites who were selected by a team of experts for their outstanding gardening practice and superb community relations. But only one can become the Digging for Victory champion, and across this series, I'm visiting each of the 9 nominated sites to try and choose a winner. Helping me with this difficult task is allotment expert Hannah Genders. Hannah is a respected garden designer with 2 medals from the Chelsea Flower Show to her name, and she can attribute much of her success to an allotment plot in Birmingham where her gardening career began. Now, we've decided to judge the sites in the spring when there'll be a hive of planting activity, and Hannah and I can clearly see their horticultural practices in action. Using a strict set of criteria, we'll be awarding points for produce, eco-friendliness, community relations and visual impact.
Quite far north, aren't we?
We certainly are, and I'll tell you what, I feel definitely like I'm a long way from Willesden.
You are a long way.
Because we're in the boonies here, aren't we? We're in the countryside, aren't we?
Well, it feels like that, but actually you've got Yorkshire just over here in the river, but evidently we're only 2 miles from Stockton-on-Tees.
Stockton-on-Tees. It's very beautiful, isn't it? Lovely woodland around us, so yeah nice setting. Obviously a bit of heavy clay involved. Really
heavy clay. It looks, I mean, this plot particularly here, that looks really seriously hard work, doesn't it?
It does. I think they should have got on that maybe a bit earlier in the season, but sort of the fork work to be done there, isn't there? Yeah.
And the thing I noticed, Chris, quite a lot of polytunnels, so people are obviously trying to extend the season. It's a bit colder up here.
Quite a traditional allotment, isn't it?
I think so. Traditional. It'll be interesting to meet some of the characters, won't it? See what's really going on here.
I think there's bound to be a few here somewhere, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
In today's programme, Hannah and I will leave no stone unturned as we complete our judging tour of the whole site. We'll be finding out how one mum hopes her allotment can feed a family of 6. 5 pieces of fruit and veg every day. Undercover, we'll find out why Preston Lane has a love affair with polytunnels. And we'll visit a learner's class to see how would-be gardeners are prepared for allotment life. But first of all, Hannah and I are catching up with site chairman John and plot holder Ian. Well, John, Ian, you're looking very industrious. It's a bit wet today. The weather's normally like this, is it?
This is untypical for this part of the world.
Is it really? So how does the climate affect the site?
Well, this is actually one of the driest corners of the country. The North Yorkshire Moors is the driest heather moorland in the country, and you've copped a rainy day, so you've done well there.
We didn't bring the sun this end, did we?
We didn't, really.
I'm finding that hard to believe at the moment, aren't you, this dryness?
You've been unlucky.
And Ian, you've got a plot on the site here.
Yeah.
Has yours got a polytunnel? We've noticed loads of polytunnels. That was our first impression.
Yeah, we actually took the site over with the polytunnel built on it, so it makes the season all year.
And do you grow any unusual produce, Ian?
Lot of sweet corn.
No.
Chili peppers. A lot of chili peppers.
Well, a lot of chili peppers.
Oh,
You're a curry fan, are you?
Oh, yes.
We've noticed also, John, that it's quite clay here, isn't it? Does that cause you problems?
Clay soil is very hard to work, yes. It's fertile.
Well, obviously you have to dig it over in the autumn, and that exposes it to the frost, and that means it breaks it up, and you get a nice tilth in the spring. Yeah.
Get it dug over before Christmas and Mother Nature does the rest.
Right, sure. Do you have to stress that to newcomers, do you?
Very much so, yes. The worst thing they can do is come up in February or March and start digging then. It'll dry out in years like this into house bricks.
Considering the challenges presented by the soil and the climate, the Preston Lane gang have done really well to get this far in our competition. The selection process began last winter as applications flooded in from sites around the country. Representatives from the National Allotments and Gardens Trust and the National Society of Allotment and Leisure Gardeners were called in to help, and using their expertise, they nominated the 9 strongest sites. But now it's down to Hannah and me. We must visit each of the nominated sites and score them in 4 main categories: produce, eco-friendliness, community relations, and visual impact. And when judging is complete, the 3 highest rated sites will go forward to our series finale. Each of our nominated sites has received a selection of gardening goodies worth 500 quid, just for reaching this stage of the competition. But the Digging for Victory champions will win a prize of £2,000 worth of vouchers for their site. Having an allotment can mean making new friends, keeping fit and enjoying gardening. But surely the biggest benefit is having access to all that tasty food. Here at Preston Lane, one of the plots is primed to provide enough food for 6 hungry mouths. The Montgomery family are doing their best to eat the recommended 5 pieces of fruit and veg every day, but that's no mean feat.
Well, with 6 people, that's 30 pieces of fruit and veg. You know, it soon mounts up, so we end up, you know, as much as we can sort of subsidise what we're producing, what we're buying at the shops, the better, really.
With 4 children, Ali found working full-time a struggle, so she left her teaching job to spend more time with her family.
So everything in my life was just like pressure, pressure, pressure and rushing, and I just thought, you know, life's too short for this. And then I suddenly found I had evenings, weekends, all this spare time, and I thought, you know, I would like to carry on learning, I'd like to carry on doing stuff. So I phoned up here and asked for a plot on the allotments.
Is one of you stand at this end, about here, and put this in the ground, and then the other one stand opposite so we get a nice straight line so we can dig a trench. Is that all right? So Louis, do you want to come and get this?
One impressive feature of this site is the learners course, which is where Ali got the gardening bug.
It was really good because it was really hands-on course. What we did was we'd spend like half the evening in the cabin sort of talking about things and sort of planning a sort of imaginary plot. And then half the time would be actually on the learner's garden. So you'd be planting potatoes or you'd be planting radishes or lettuce or salad or whatever. So it's real good hands-on.
The gardener who first enthused Ali was John. He gave up running his own allotment in order to share his knowledge on the learner's plot, which is quite literally a training ground for would-be allotmenteers.
This is really where it all started for Alison. This time last year she thought she'd like to learn how to grow fruit and vegetables, and she's, I think, probably our star pupil at the moment, but the others are coming on fine. I realised that, in fact, about 3 out of 5 people didn't actually know what to do. They obviously needed a bit of assistance just to get cracking on allotment scale gardening, which is just a little bit more than tinkering about with your flower beds and lawns and borders at home, really. We're now sort of progressing into sustainability, cutting out food miles. I mean, my stuff here, it has sort of 2 food miles on my bike to get home, and that's a bit better than you know, getting asparagus from Peru. It can all be grown here, virtually on the doorstep. And it's the same for everybody else, really. They can actually do it if they're shown how.
One lesson that Ali learnt on the course was how to chit potatoes, to prepare them for planting. And today she and her family are busy putting her newfound knowledge into practice.
Chitting potatoes. I'd never heard of it, and people are sort of willy-nilly saying, well, you must chit them. And I'm thinking, what's chitting? I don't know what chitting a potato is. And then, of course, you find out that what you have to do with your seed potatoes is to leave them in the sunlight until they start to sprout, and then they're ready to go in the ground. But I'd never heard of that before. You learn something new every day.
Surprisingly, after all her efforts, Ali doesn't always eat what she grows.
I really hate potatoes. So everything I cook for the kids is always pasta and rice, but which is a bit mean because they absolutely love potatoes. So I promised them, like, since they come and help on the allotment, they plant the potatoes, I'll cook them for them.
Well, Ali, we've just seen you and the 4 offspring planting potatoes.
Yeah.
So how did they get on?
They'd looked at the sort of the bit sprouting off and assumed they were the eyes, so they thought they were roots. So they'd put them in with the roots down.
So that's perfectly logical.
It is logical, and I should have thought. But anyway, they've come up, they're fine.
And Ali, tell us about your raspberries.
I read, when your raspberries have finished, anything that's fruited that year, you chop it down to like 2 inches from the ground. So I thought, all right, fine. And then somebody said, oh, no, that's summer raspberries. You don't do that to autumn raspberries. So I was like, oh. But I was like, are these autumn raspberries? Because with just inheriting the plot, you don't actually know what you have half the time.
It's hard to tell, really, Ali, with raspberries, whether they're autumn, whether they're summer. It's just when you eat them. Most raspberries crop in June. There are a few varieties that crop as late as September. But anyway, the main thing to do is clear all the weeds out.
Right.
Because the weeds are taking some of the goodness out of the soil and you want to go that into the raspberries. And then I put a really good mulch of maybe manure, well-rotted manure, compost, and cover all the soil with that. And then you want to be cutting down the raspberries once they've finished fruiting.
So you don't mind making the odd mistake then?
You just have to get on with it. And at the end of the day, I think most of the seeds, most of the things you do, you think it's 90p if it works.
Yeah.
It works. But there's always somebody to ask and sort of say,
Sure.
look, what am I doing?
Even the old gardeners make mistakes. I've been known to make the odd one. I remember years ago I grew onions on my balcony. I had like a container vegetable garden and I let them bolt, which is not really a good idea because the following spring I just had the onions growing out of all my neighbours' chimney pots and roof tiles. So this is how you find out, isn't it? So there's no shame in it, Ellie.
You're really popular then.
Now with acres of allotments to cover, it's time for Hannah and I to crack on with some serious judging. As we make our way around the site, we'll be noting down the bad points as well as the good. One polytunnel has caught our eye as it demonstrates what makes plastic so fantastic. Well, Hannah, you couldn't see a better example of the advantages of polytunnel use.
I know, look at these, Chris. Sweet corn.
This is quite interesting because he's using root trainer plots here, and that means he's forcing the roots to go down, so he gets nice deep rooting. Sometimes if you don't do that, you get what's called corkscrewing, which means when you actually plant it out into the ground, the roots don't move into the new soils.
Put them out into a clay soil, they'll be fine.
They're going to actually cope much better, aren't they, with this nice warm microclimatic start?
Yes.
Well, talking about the site holistically, the space is well used here, but the aesthetics aren't strong.
No, and I have to say that I did notice they are spraying some of the weeds out. It's not all organic practice.
Well, it's lovely and warm in here, and we're going to go soft if we're not careful. We better get outside again. Preston Lane allotments have dazzled us with their support for learner gardeners. So will they continue to impress, or will we get polytunnel vision? Welcome back to Digging for Victory, where our search for Britain's best allotment has brought us to Preston Lane in Stockton-on-Tees as they pitch for a place in our grand finale. Now, taking on an allotment can be a daunting prospect, and although newcomers come with plenty of enthusiasm, if things don't go to plan, they can often get tempted to give up. Hannah is finding out what they do here at Preston Lane to help.
So, John, you're teaching the real basics. Well, what sort of things would you cover?
Preparing the soil for seed sowing, it's choosing seeds, sowing seeds, looking after young plants, just getting stuck into the real basics, really.
If people can have a course like this, get onto a site, learn so that they really feel that they've got a grasp of what it's all about, then they're much more likely to succeed, aren't they?
I think so. It's all about feeling that you can actually do it. And also getting the feeling for what you can't do.
Yeah.
A traditional 10-rod plot can be much too much for many
quite a
people.
lot of soil, isn't it?
Too right it is, yes. It's awesome. And when it rains, the weeds are going to outstrip everything in growth.
So everybody's sowing madly now, and how does it carry on?
Well, it certainly isn't going to finish at the end of term. Everybody's going to keep coming back odd days during the whole of the summer and the early autumn, and they're going to harvest what they've sown.
Two plot holders who have benefited from the learners' course are Hilary and Sue, who were keen to battle a common foe.
The weeds were as high as myself, and my father had to actually get a scythe and cut them down like that. I've learnt more watching and being told than I could have ever got from a book.
If somebody was, say, watching this and thinking, gosh, I'd love to take on an allotment, what would be your advice to them?
Don't be discouraged.
Do it. And do it in bits. Don't look at the whole allotment and say, oh my goodness, I can't do all of this. Make it into little sections and cover the rest with old carpet or anything that you can until you're ready to work on that bit as well.
As Hannah and I have travelled north, we've noticed a considerable difference in growth of produce compared to down south, where the season starts earlier. However, that doesn't mean to say there aren't ways of increasing the growing season. As we've seen, enterprising gardeners at Preston Lane allotment site are using polytunnels to raise the temperature and lengthen the growing season. The results are clearly visible, with warmth-loving varieties such as cucumbers, red and yellow peppers and chillies able to grow in abundance. One of the site's newest members, John, is keen to plant out his seedlings as soon as possible. But at Preston Lane, it's first things first.
Well, I'm building a polytunnel, and the difference between a polytunnel and a greenhouse is that a polytunnel is made from as a framework, which is then wrapped with plastic, and it's much cheaper to construct size for size, and also a lot easier to construct too. there is a disadvantage in that the plastic does wear, but this is about a 5-year cycle, so it's not too bad.
John has gathered a band of volunteers to help construct his tunnel. And while the sun shines, they get busy building the base.
It's a bit difficult, isn't it?
Despite the team's excellent progress, John is concerned they might not be able to finish the job today.
Maybe later on a possibility of rain. And what you really do need is to get these struts dried, because what we have to do is to stick on some tape, and obviously it won't stick on unless tubes are actually dry. The other thing is that, of course, you need really warm, dry weather for the polythene, because what it does is it actually expands in the warm weather, and then when it's cooler it contracts to make a really tight fitting structure which doesn't rock or doesn't shake, and also doesn't wear the polythene.
John's worst fears have come true, and a dark cloud hangs over the project. The troops head to a nearby shed, and John can only hope the storm will blow over soon. One of the workers, Dennis, is an amateur impressionist and has a trick up his sleeve to cheer up his fellow allotmenteers.
I've got a little surprise for the chaps on the allotment, my friends. I've been doing this chap for about 35 years now, and no one knows I'm doing, and so I'm going to cheer him up. Bag of nerves. It's warm in here. Look at my skin's leak. Tissue, all fall down. Thank you very much, thank you.
Dennis's impression has done the trick, and John is feeling optimistic about planting out his seedlings.
Now, I've been looking at a weather forecast and it says it might brighten up, so there's every hope that if it dries off within an hour or two, we might be able to get the thing over, and that would make me really happy, because I could get my seedlings from their trays into my nice new polytunnel.
One person delighted to see John's polytunnel complete is his wife Margaret, who's been nurturing the seedlings at home. Right, so you were a bit stressed about whether your seedlings would have a home, weren't you, there for a little while, Margaret?
I certainly was, yes. I was chomping a bit to get them out, and it was bringing them from home, and it was very difficult.
So, John, was there some marital disharmony towards the end? Were you under pressure?
Oh, no. No, it was all very, very friendly.
Was it amicable, was it?
Yeah, I was up here 12 hours a day, building in order to get them out.
I built a few polytunnels. I know the most difficult bit I used to have trouble with is getting those plastic taunts, yeah? And you have to attach it to these dust balls down the bottom and then really stretch it, and that's not easy. You must have had some help, eh?
Oh, yeah, we had plenty of help to... Well, first of all, because on a windy day it might blow away, and secondly, because you need to have people at either corner and in the middle sort of pulling down while you fasten them down.
So it's your first summer with the polytunnel, and the important thing during the summer, during the hot period, is watering everything really well. And I'd also advise that you keep the doors open as much as possible so that ventilation keeps coming through, because otherwise you get problems with pest and diseases, particularly mildew and stuff like that.
But it is a real asset, like you say. You touched on it there. I mean, it means you've got a nerve centre to bring plants on, a propagation centre and all this, and it's not expensive, is it?
No, it costs us about £250, I think, altogether.
So that's a bargain, isn't it?
I mean, all this space, you've got loads of space.
Yeah, it's a bargain, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you've got quite an unusual bit of recycling going on, haven't you, Margaret?
Yes.
Yes, I think
This is it here, isn't
Hannah's
it?
already made friends with
I have,
with her.
actually.
Yeah,
I think this is amazing. Look at this.
Now, you actually made this out of placky bags. How did you do that?
Using very large, thick needles, just knitted it.
So this is going to be used as a scarecrow, yeah? And you're going to have a whole family, aren't you? So we shall return to meet father and mother and sister some time to come.
Yeah.
If you fancy seeing what you can grow in polytunnels, cloches or in the open air, then you'll be glad to know that in the UK there are around 500,000 allotment plots. The majority of sites are owned by the local council, which may have a waiting list, but don't let that deter you because plots do become available quite regularly. The phrase dig for victory was coined in wartime Britain when the government campaigned for people to grow their own food and created hundreds of thousands of new allotment plots. Nowadays, the current trend for organic and locally grown produce means that allotmenteering is making a major comeback. A typical plot is roughly the size of your local swimming pool, and the average rent is £25 a year. A small price to pay for the tastiest veg you'll ever eat. Well, back at Preston Lane in Stockton, our day of judging is almost at an end. So Hannah and I must now compare notes and score the site in each of our 4 main categories: produce, eco-friendliness, community relations and visual impact. Well, another interesting day, Hannah.
Yeah, lovely feel to this site, real sense of family and community. There's some really healthy looking crops. I mean, that polytunnel we were in earlier, somebody who really knows their stuff.
Yeah, a really strong point is all the propagation that's going on. Like earlier I said, I wonder what's nestling under the plastic. Well, that's been quite a revelation.
They're doing that fantastic learning garden, aren't they? You know, 10 weeks, they're doing a 10-week course, which is really impressive, I think.
To bring in newcomers, I think that's a really strong point for them. Well, visual impact, this is always a tricky one because obviously allotments are here for practical purposes, but we are asked to judge on it.
And it's a very functional site, this, isn't it? It really is about growing veg. There is quite a lot of rubbish and stuff. It's not particularly tidy, I think, this one.
Yeah, so they kind of sort of lose a little bit there, don't they? But like I say, there's very little unused land on here.
Absolutely.
So they're using the space really well, and they do have communal buildings. Not the prettiest in the world, but they are serving a purpose.
Yeah.
It's tea time at Preston Lane. But no amount of wine can make us reveal the scores until we visited each of our 9 nominated sites. Hello, Preston Lane. Hello! Sorry you couldn't bring the weather today, but it hasn't deterred us from having a very good day, eh, Hannah?
No, it's a cracking site. You've got a real sense of family here on this little site. Everybody knows everybody and you all muck in.
You're enjoying yourselves, aren't you? Oh, yeah. Even your plastic bag scarecrow looks happy, I'll tell you, yeah? Well, I can't tell you any scores, but anyway, really well done and best of luck for the future. Will Preston Lane make it through to the final 3? Will they be pipped at the post by another of our nominated sites? To find out, keep watching Digging for Victory.